Hello, this is Simple Life Philosophy, and I am your host, Ed Raby. This is the channel where I'm on a journey to discover a philosophy of life that is both simple to understand and execute, and thus move my life from a more complicated life to a more simple life through following that philosophy. I want to remind everybody to like, share, subscribe, comment below, hit your notification bell. Every little bit helps the algorithm, and I appreciate your time and your effort to do that. Everybody who has really participated in this so far, thank you very much. Today I've been mulling around a question in my head, and I don't know if I really have an answer yet, but I've been reading a lot of the Stoics. I've been reading How to Be a Stoic. I've been looking at some of the Stoic writers, particularly Epictetus and Marcus Aurelius. And even though Marcus Aurelius was definitely involved in politics because he was the emperor of Rome, but he would have had to have some political savvy to hold that position and execute that position well. There's also Epictetus was a slave. I think Seneca, I'm not really sure what Seneca did, but offhand, I know he was a teacher. I think he was a teacher. But when you look at these men, these people, the one thing I don't note in them is like an extremist position, okay, politically. I was listening to a bunch of YouTubers, and there was a common theme among some of these homestead type YouTubers that are off homesteading and starting homesteads, and when people ask them why, their reason is a lot of times just look at the world, look around you. One of them even boldly said, he says, on the one hand, he says, I got very alarmed by Trump and his followers and that extremist, religious, conservative, far-right position. And he said, but I am equally alarmed with the woke left. And he says, wokeness, he says, I'm not sure it's rightly named. I can't remember who it was. I'll have to look it up. Maybe I'll find it later. But I remember listening to him, and he says, and these two extremes, he said, seem to fight in our culture, and the rest of us seem to kind of get caught in the middle. He says, if we follow either one of these paths, we're going to end up, as a society, getting crushed by something. Now, I don't know if his political analysis is great. As somebody who has a political science degree, I do watch politics, but I'm going to be honest with you. I don't really watch it to decide who I want to follow or get along with, because I have my own views on, what government should be and all that other stuff. And my position has always been that the government should be about a specific task and should be narrowly focused on that task, which is namely defending the rights of the citizens within the country. And it should always be about the rights of those citizens in the country, and it should be a neutral player. The moment you put money in the pocket of the government and it is no longer a neutral player but has a stake in who wins and loses is when government becomes corrupt. And of course, most all governments become corrupt in some way, which is another good reason not to trust them. And this guy was kind of going along the same line, saying it's not that I don't see the merit sometimes of some of the things that these people say. It's a question of extremism. Now, the problem I have as a political scientist with the word extremist or fundamentalist is how relative that can be. Like, if you took the position of a woke person 20 years ago, not only would you have been labeled as a super extremist, you would have been discredited. Wait 20 years and suddenly that position is given credence. To many, it's still an extremist position, but people are actually listening to it. Instead of 20 years ago, they wouldn't even have given it a thought. I grew up in the 80s and 90s when the religious right were heavily influencing the Republican Party, and there was an extreme idea, which people still write about, called, basically Christian nationalism, but we're going to make America a Christian nation. And even as a Christian, I was kind of alarmed by that position, because I'm like, I think we need to be a secular nation, because then everybody's religion is protected equally. If we put our skin in the game and then some other religion gets control at that time, then suddenly they could take all the things that we built up to give ourselves special rights and use them against us. I think it's always better for religion, if they're going to exist, to take a very neutral position on politics. But, it's never quite worked out that way. And what I note about extremist positions is they tend to change. It's interesting in the church, like you can relabel extremism as fundamentalism. What is a fundamentalist? A fundamentalist is a person who is a true believer in whatever it is. If you read the Bible and read the Quran and you read various religious books, if you take them at face value and very literally, you can get some very dangerous extreme positions. Most of the violence you see caused by religious groups is usually done, not always, but usually done by their extremists of those religions. And so you have to be carefully thinking about that. So the question becomes, in philosophy, somebody like myself who's an atheist and who is just trying to follow a simple life of philosophy, I think Stoicism is my key, one of my keys anyway, to finding that simple life. And is it possible to have an extremist position and be a Stoic? Becomes a really good question, because there is so much talk in these guys about moderation, about making sure that your position is a rational position rather than an emotional one. Because in my opinion, extreme emotion, if you're an extremely emotional person, if you don't have a grip on your emotions, people can tap into that and manipulate you, okay? It is much easier to get people's passions riled up than it is to appeal to their reason to a certain core action. And anybody who studied a little social psychology would know that that's so. And so politicians and religious figures both try to excite people's passions. I remember when I was a preacher, my initial preaching was very cerebral. I was very much a preacher of the mind. I was very much into delving into the intellect of the text and getting those key Greek words. But I realized I wasn't getting a lot of effect with that. And so I changed the way I preached from that to more of a true Pentecostal style, because I was in the Pentecostal church at the time, and appealing more to the emotion, appealing more to the spirit, whatever the hell that was. And what ended up happening is I got a lot of better results, and my preaching began to be perceived as better. And the thing is, in order to preach that way, you have to excite emotions, you have to take extreme positions. And so I'm reading these guys, these Stoic writers, and I'm thinking, okay, you're trying to appeal to people's reason, and that's difficult in the first place. And I think even they acknowledge it several times, that it's difficult. My main interest is it possible to be a Stoic philosopher, follow Stoic philosophy, and be an extremist, be a fundamentalist? I'm not sure. I suppose it is. I can't discount. I mean, the moment you say, nah, can be an extremist, or yes, everybody's an extremist in this, somebody shows the exception to the rule, and your no or all becomes invalid. So you can do some, most. I think most of the time, I don't think you can have an extremist position as a Stoic. But at the same time, extremism can also be viewed a different way. If you have an extreme passion for something, is that okay in Stoicism? Is that the proper place? Because I'm leading to this other question, which I think is a little bit deeper question. Is there a way to control your emotions and focus your emotions in a Stoic philosophy in such a way that you can truly and genuinely be passionate about something, okay, and still use that passion in such a way that it still fulfills the Stoic ideal of being rational? In my later years as a preacher, I really thought about this idea in different terms, and I wasn't a Stoic at the time, but I was. There's a lot of Stoic philosophy in Christianity. Just read the New Testament sometime, and you'll see Stoic philosophy there. And that's what always resonated with me about the Bible, even after I wasn't of the faith. didn't believe some of the mythology, I still resonated with the philosophy of it a little bit. And I look at it now and I ask myself the question, is it possible to be passionate? Because by later preaching, I would start off with the rational idea that I was trying to get across, and then ask myself the question, how do I excite people's passions as the doorway to get them to see the reason? Okay? And I wonder if it's possible to do something similar with Stoic philosophy, is all I'm asking. I don't really know the answer to that question. I'm just proposing it, and maybe, a good discussion in the comments might, alleviate some of that. But it's just, to me, a very interesting question. Is it possible to be an extremist or a fundamentalist and be a Stoic? Are those ideas compatible at all? If they are, perhaps, if there is a way that can be compatible, is there a good cause that one can rationally be passionate about? Okay, and I think that's the issue. Is I'm looking at, because a lot of Stoicism is viewed negatively as you're trying to remove emotions. You're trying to be like Mr. Spock from the old Star Trek. And that's not what Stoicism is leading to. It's saying take control of your emotions, not necessarily deny them, and learn how to express them and properly with good rationality. And it seems like there's a small theme there saying, can I be rationally passionate about something? And that's the deep question for me right now. I'm still kind of pondering that question. I think because it leads to a lot of things. Because if there's one thing I've learned is if I get my emotions behind something, I'm much more dedicated to it and will work through it. There is a place for habits that you need to do that you may not be passionate about, but rationally you say, I've got to do this because of that. But there's also, I think, a great deal of joy in finding that rational passion that you might have, if I can use that term. So I'd be interested in your thoughts. So, if you can leave some sort of note in the comments or what you think, or what kind of thought you think. Is it possible to be rationally passionate as in extreme ways or in fundamentalist ways? Is it possible to do that? I want to thank you for stopping by. If you're going to consider the answer to my question, be sure to leave a comment. Make sure you like, share, and subscribe this video as much as possible. Everything you do helps me out. And the success of this channel is going to largely depend on you guys making sure that you like things and making sure that that YouTube algorithm, those YouTube algorithm gods, get appeased so that I get more and more noticed. If that's something that you think should happen, be sure to like, share, and subscribe, and comment below, and get your notification bell turned on. Once again, thank you for stopping by. This has been Simple Life Philosophy with your host, Ed Raby, and I wish you a great and simple day.